Thank you, Alfonso. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Hey, Steve. Hey, Judy. Thanks for the response. Geneva, great. Okay, cool. We are live. Welcome. We're just going to give this a couple more minutes till we get started. So hang tight as others join. Hey, everybody. Michael, Andrew, Bill. Okay. Hi, folks. If you're just tuning in from Facebook or YouTube, welcome. We're going to get started here in a moment. Thanks, Michael. We are, all the Move to Amend staff are co-directors now. Good thing. Okay. Welcome, everybody. It's 30 minutes after now, so we'll just give it maybe one more minute to let folks join. All right, we've got Arizona, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Ohio, California, Minnesota, of course. Great, thanks for being here. All right, well, let's get started. The slides are up. Everyone should be able to see me and Jeff and the slides. So let us know if you can't see any of those things. My name is Jessica Munger. I'm co-director of Move to Amend. I'm here with Jeff Clark, and he's from Minnesota. And we're going to be talking tonight about the 2022 Pledge to Amend campaign. So I'm going to start off, and then I'll hand it over to Jeff to share his experience. And thank you so much for being here tonight. If you have questions, you can go ahead and type them in the chat bar on the right-hand side of your screen. And we may not be able to juggle everything at the same time, but we will answer questions at the end. So thank you so much. And Move to Amend staff, if you want to help answer questions in the chat, that's great too. So thanks for being here. And Jeff, if you want to go to the first slide, that would be great. Sure. Thanks for doing the slides tonight. That's us. Okay. And so tonight, we're going to do first a quick overview of Move to Amend. I will give you the basics in case you're new here, or in case you're it's been a while and you want a refresher about who we are and what we do. We'll talk a little bit about general Move to Amend campaign goals and strategy. And as we do, we'll talk about Pledge to Amend. So the campaign, the program that we're focusing on tonight, we'll give a general introduction about what the campaign does and why we do it. And then I'm going to hand it over to Jeff, who is representing Minnesota tonight. And Minnesota is just so good at the Pledge to Amend campaign. So he's going to share wisdom and how they do it there and get us inspired. It's a really important year for Pledge to Amend. So thank you for being here. And thank you so much, Jeff, for sharing your experience and wisdom with us. You're the perfect person. And then we'll go to questions and then next steps. So next slide, if you would. Okay, so Move to Amend is a coalition organization. So we're made up of hundreds of thousands of people, organizations, groups, state networks, advocates, lots of different configurations. And we come together with a commitment to social justice, economic justice, ending corporate power, and building a vibrant democracy that is actually accountable to people and prioritizes planet and people over corporate interests. So it's not just about the amendment. This mission is a big one, and it's about confronting corporate power and building towards a just and sustainable future. Next, when you're ready. So that actually is a pretty unique thing for an organization who is in the democracy movement, if you will. So you've probably gotten the understanding now that Move to Amend is dedicated to our principles and values as we move forward towards the amendment and addressing corporate power. So those principles and values include anti-oppression and solidarity organizing. So that means that in the way that we approach organizing towards the amendment and towards whatever we're doing, we are doing so in a way that centralizes anti-oppression and doing our organizing through the coalition building and grassroots power building and being in support and solidarity with other fronts of struggle in the movement who are experiencing the effects of corporate power the most. So again, that's how we do our coalition and movement building. We try not to be in a silo. We are not a get money out of politics group. We are a group that's dedicated to true grassroots power movement building from the bottom up to confront corporate power. So that means that we have always had a dedication to grassroots organizing. So we have a small national team who helps our affiliates all over the country. That's what we call our chapters, who do public education, this coalition building, passing local resolutions and initiatives, campaigns like Pledge to Amend campaign, and lots of stuff. It all happens, the power's at the grassroots, and we believe that that's key to building a successful movement. We also have a strong dedication to political education. So we know that movements are more successful when we study the past of people's movements and what strategies and tactics and lessons we can take from them and build forward. So we have a dedication to movement education, to keeping ourselves up to date with the movement as it progresses from here forward as well. And that's been central to Move to Amend from the beginning. Another thing that's very important to us is that we keep our political and economic independence. So you probably have guessed that we don't get large donations from political parties or corporations or big trusts or family funds. We are really dedicated to being independent from political parties. That's essential because, as we know, political parties are often just run by the same corporations, and that's the very structure we're fighting against. So we get almost all of our funding from small grassroots donations, average folks giving what they can every month to make it happen. That is how this work happens, and it happens on a shoestring budget. So, but it's very important to us that we have that independence and are not controlled by the interests of the moneyed class. Okay, thanks, Jeff. Next slide. Okay, so within those goals and values, or within those principles and values, some of the goals that Move to Amend has are to, one, pass the We the People Amendment. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, is some of the programming that is in service of the passage of the We the People Amendment, which is currently House Joint Resolution 48. The amendment makes clear that corporations and other artificial entities do not have constitutional rights, and that money is not free speech protected by the First Amendment and to be used as political speech. The other goal we have is to provoke discussion and organizing about how to make real the promise of American democracy that we've been told we've had through constitutional renewal. So we see constitutional renewal as a tactic towards codifying a world that we want and deserve, right? So we do a lot of public education, like I said, having conversations about why a constitutional framework is important for our movement demands to be met. So we do a lot more than just the amendment, but these are the two sort of overarching goals that Move to Amend exists to serve. Thanks, Jeff. So how do we amend the Constitution? It's a big, mighty task. There are two ways. One is through Congress. So, well, I'll say both have a similar process, but in the congressional route, 2/3 of both houses of Congress, so the House and Senate, must pass matching amendment language, the same resolution through the House and Senate. 2/3 of both houses. And then 3/4 of states must ratify that language, which is 38 states. The other way to do it is through a constitutional convention, which is called for in Article 5 of the Constitution, which states that 2/3 of state legislatures call for a convention to propose an amendment. That's 34 states. And then, similar to the congressional route, 3/4 of those states must ratify whatever would come out of that convention. So there are two routes, and Move to Amend since the beginning has been sort of working both routes. Either way, as you'll notice, 3/4 of states have to ratify. So that means that people on the ground, lay people, folks, the public have to understand why it's important. So we have dedicated a lot and invested a lot in that. And then, of course, we also talk to elected officials, we lobby Congress, and work the congressional route as well. Next slide, please. Okay, cool. So our strategy in doing this, how do we do this in the big picture sense, is coalition building, super important. We cannot do this on our own, right? So we are reaching out to other organizations, other bodies, working on issues affected by corporate power. So unions, religious communities, anybody who's working on any social justice matter, it is related, right? So we try to draw the lines between corporate power and the amendment and whatever other folks are working on. Building a broad and diverse and multiracial, intergenerational movement is essential to winning, right? We believe that we cannot do this in a silo in so many ways. And so our movement has to be strong, understanding of the issue, and powerful from the bottom up. And community organizing, not just activism, right? So the difference there would be that organizing is building power, is making things happen, not just signing the petition. Signing the petition is a great first start, but that's how we get in, right? That's how we start to do organizing. Activism is showing up, and it's super important. And organizing is building power. So that's also really important. And then, of course, focusing on grassroots organizing to pass local and state resolutions calling for an amendment, because no matter what, this has to come from the bottom up, of course. So we've got communities doing what they can, resolutions, initiatives, state ballot initiatives, things like that, to start building the public record and public education around the issues. Okay, next slide. Thank you so much. So Move to Amend structure is kind of interesting, I think pretty unique. Like I said, we're a coalition organization. So we have lots of forms. There are Move to Amend affiliates. That's what we call our chapters. We have, it's kind of always in flux all over the country, but we have dozens all over the country. Move to Amend advocates are folks who are working in their communities, maybe without a full group, who are lobbying, educating, and sort of working a bit more as a solo advocate, and with other groups in the area as well. And then there's We the People Amendment working groups, which are not full affiliates, but are constellations of folks maybe from other orgs who are taking on this work because they see it as essential to doing whatever they have been working on too. So like I said, it's a really unique and diverse coalition. And then we've got the national team. That's what we call the board and staff. There's just a handful of us really now, of board and staff who help support the affiliates work of doing the grassroots movement building. We've got caucuses, so we've got, again, constellations of issue areas that are working on the amendment. So we have law and research, we have labor, we have environmental, we've had students. So these groups that are coalescing around a constituency to organize for this. And then we have coalition projects. So things we work on with other organizations to do conferences, symposiums, PMAs, people's movement assemblies, and the like. So that's the general idea of how it looks as we engage the strategy. Next, please. Okay, so then the purpose of the Pledge to Amend campaign that we're talking about tonight is to advance these goals that we've talked about. So this is one way that we engage elected officials and candidates running for office around the amendment. The goal is to educate the candidate about the issue. You'll find that as you talk to people, lobby, do advocacy around the amendment, most people just haven't quite heard of it yet, or they don't totally know. And that applies to the candidates and elected officials as well. They need education. So that's where we come in. please sign this. They might say, what is this? I thought that we were just getting money out of politics. And then we have an opportunity to educate those in office. We want to identify whether that candidate is a supporter of your position. We want to know where they stand on the issue, right? Maybe move a supporter to be a champion, or an undecided person or candidate to be a supporter. So if we can shift someone's support in our favor, that's an opportunity there. And sometimes we want to just neutralize someone. So say we have a race for some seat where there's a candidate who is super pro-corporate. Maybe we want to let them know that the other candidates in the race have taken this pledge that they support the amendment. And that kind of makes this pro-corporate candidate either have to neutralize and like cut it out, or it makes them look like they are on the other side and not on our team. So it's really a useful campaign in a lot of ways. And these are just some of the benefits of the Pledge to Amend campaign. Next, please. Okay, so let's see. Let me just make sure I'm on track here. Okay, so Pledge to Amend campaign goals for this year. We've been running this campaign for several years. We've had great success, and Jeff is going to share that in just a minute. For this year, our goals are to target candidates for local, state, and federal office to get their support on record for the We the People Amendment and make this an election issue, right? All of you who are here now, you know how important this is. And you know that you want your candidates and elected officials talking about it. You want voters talking about it, right? I've heard you all say it should be a kitchen table election issue. So this is an opportunity. And we don't care if they're running for president or for county commissioner or city council, doesn't matter. We would like to get on record the positions of everyone in every race locally. And our goal is to get 1,000 Pledge to Amend signups, with 50% of those elected on election day. So part of this is that we talk to candidates, we get their take on the issue and them on record, but then we want to get some of those people in office so that we have champions for the amendment who have power and decision-making responsibilities, who understand the importance. Because especially at a local level, you know, if you're a city councilor or a state assembly person, you're a lot more likely then to advance to Congress or to be in positions in the community that can help when we come to ratification, right? We want those folks to understand the issue and that voters really care about it. So those are our goals this year. We'd really love for your help in meeting them, and we think we can. Okay, next, thank you. So the pledge itself that we're talking about here is a questionnaire that goes to all candidates of all parties in whatever race you are engaging with. It says, I support amending the US Constitution to make clear that corporations and other artificial entities do not have constitutional rights, and that money is not speech, and campaign spending should be limited through regulation. I will use my office to support the movement to amend the Constitution by passing resolutions, proposing legislation, and publicly speaking out about the need for this amendment. How will you use your public office? So we have them state their support, that they plan to take action on that support, and then we ask them, what does that action look like? So it gives them an opportunity to expand. You know, a candidate who is on the right track might have a really good answer for that. Some candidates might be short, and that's information that the voters will want if they care about this issue. So that's what the actual language is, and leaves room for their interpretation also. And then we've got the purpose of the pledge, right, which is beyond just having something on paper, but it elevates our issue to incumbents and challengers. When someone's running for office, they want to know what their constituents or voters care about. What are the issues that are going to motivate them to vote? And so letting them know that this is something we care about, forcing them to do some educating themselves on it, and then it creates an opportunity for us to educate them as well, let them know where the people stand on this, why there's such public support, and why it's smart for them to support it as well. And then if the candidate gets elected, again, you can hold them accountable. It's a lot easier for us to go into a meeting and say, hey, remember when you were running, you said, you know, these words, we have them right here. You were going to do these things to advance the amendment. So that's some really helpful leverage in us securing tangible support for the amendment. So that's the overview. And now I'm going to hand it over to Jeff Clark, who is just a mastermind of Pledge to Amend, and he can walk you through how they've been so successful in Minnesota and why this year is important. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, everybody. I'm glad you're here with us tonight. I am, as Jessica said, we're actually, what's implied in what she said is I've been around through a number of campaigns, I think in Minnesota since 2016. I've had one of the core roles, so I'm probably the best person in this position among our volunteers in Minnesota to be doing this. And I think I can give you an idea that this doesn't have to be too daunting that a few people cannot conduct a campaign. It can work. And I just wanted to start out with implicit in, Jessica went over a number of things that the campaign is supposed to do, including, educating candidates, getting their commitment, leading them toward it if necessary, finding out where the opponents are and try to soften or neutralize them. Somewhere in what we're able to do with our nose to the grindstone on the ground, a lot of that stuff gets done. But I distill the focus into, first of all, we do want to reach every candidate running in each election, whether that particular year it's a national, statewide, or local, or some mix of them, which often happens. And I'll be referring to 2020 a little bit later on, which was kind of a mix of that at state and national. Because we have to reach everybody, but you will find, especially in local races, there are some offices that come up that are really not as amenable to the pledge because the roles they have are not like that, like a finance board, which I think I'll mention later, is or in our earlier campaigns, we didn't have the reach to cover everybody, so we had to be more selective, especially in major towns, to target them for pledges. But we try to reach everyone, and we have been doing that in the last couple of campaigns now with no more people than we had at the beginning. So we can improve the situation through efficiencies. So we do want to reach them all, inform the candidates of the purposes and values of their pledge, as I mentioned, the education part, and we want to be able to follow up, thank them, and publicize them to their publics and the entire state public so they know about we're visible, as well as the people in their legislature or their towns, or city councils, whatever it happens to be. So we publicize that in our newsletter and social media. And then we have also been trying to reach out in secondary focus to inform statewide and local media of the campaign and its results, so it reaches people who were not necessarily moved to amend supporters. That's been secondary because we've had secondary success with that. But that's the two levels that we're working with. Now, what are we working with in terms of human, yet should be human resources for conducting the campaign? We have about 2 or 3 core volunteers who follow through on everything, from first crafting messages that are going out in communications, the pledge, getting forms together, online forms, following up, making sure things are publicized in our newsletters and social media as pledges start to come in, and reporting on that as we go along. There are only 2 or 3 key people who go through the entire campaign from pre-primary to post-election. And then we have 1 or 2 volunteers who handle specific tasks. And right now it is literally doing those 2 things I have listed in parentheses. We have a spreadsheet expert who gets all the candidates together so we can track them once we've received them from the Secretary of State's office. And we have an expert who used to be an executive assistant who does our postal mailings. which are the other form we communicate with candidates with. And those are the only two tasks they work with. It's the core volunteers that handle everything else about the campaign. And in the third bullet point, that's just a note that we start about a month before primaries, where applicable, meaning some races there are not really primaries. They're not contested as to who's going to be candidates. And we go until just after the November elections. So identifying the candidates first. That is our fabulous Secretary of State's election office provides files for that, usually available about a day or so after the withdrawal period. There's a primary deadline, and then typical, probably in other states as well as Minnesota, there's a 2-day window for anyone who's thinking about withdrawing after the filing period. I've never noticed many people withdrawing during the primary period, but we normally have to wait until the withdrawal comes. Then the Secretary of State's office makes available the, and what I want to do is go over to one of these here and see how that's going to work for me right now. Okay, this office. Okay, this is their elections. This is the part of the Secretary of State's office that deals with candidate filings. Okay, and what we've got down here is, I think I did something, for example, if I look up a specific candidate, let me just do that for a moment here before coming back to this. So I had particular one, when a candidate files, there are different requirements for the contact information they provide. Sometimes, in this case, it was for a school board candidate this past year. So residence address, they don't really have a campaign address. It's a very small campaign. Others, I believe the residence address is not required. So you'll get a campaign address from some candidates who want to keep their residence private. But you'll notice, for example, I've got a phone number, but we have no email number. That had to be tracked down later. But I want to go back to this page again for a moment. And is my audio coming through okay? I'm getting a signal that I may be low on resources and audio may be affected. I'm just hoping it's not. Okay, so I said when they're done at the office, the SOS office, they provide the filings. In this case, there are at the federal, state, and county level, and then the real local races, like for the school boards. And when you click on that, you go over to a link and they provide this ASCII file, which we can then put into a spreadsheet. And as I said, normally they are very efficient about getting this spreadsheet available shortly after the withdrawal period, or they may actually make it available the day after the closing period and then amend it and tweak it if anybody withdraws during the next 2 days. But they've been very good about that. The only time that has been a little delay is a special election that's out of season because a seat comes open, like in the spring we had that once, and they didn't have the candidates up. I call the elections office, talk to an assistant. He's got it to me within a half an hour. He provides me the spreadsheet that does not yet appear on this site. So it works very smoothly. And I imagine that's probably an experience you could duplicate in most states. That was without even speaking to any particular person. That's just the way their office worked. Okay, so back to here. So what we do is our spreadsheet specialist creates a spreadsheet for doing that tracking. And I've made a version of this that depopulates it with the, does not provide the people who were involved in this, but at least you can look across this and see we've got contact columns when we get a pledge in, column D, pledge year, and we indicate who's been contacting them, what the date was of the contact, when they were emailed, phone date, and that sort of thing. And the green things are their contact information that comes from that candidate filing that I showed you. And we put that stuff in there in case it's needed, because the person who deals with the physical postal mailing gets a version of this spreadsheet that eliminates all the extraneous stuff except their name, their office, and their either home or campaign address, so they can be reached properly. Envelopes can be, addressed correctly. So several people are actually using this spreadsheet. As I showed I think I've got one other thing here I'm going to bring up before I go back to the presentation. This part of the actual spreadsheet had that candidate highlighted. There was Kayla Hauser that was running for school board. She's the one who did not have an email address, and we wanted to reach her by email. We had to do a little research on that, and they did finally come up with an email address. Where is that here? Okay, I think it's down. Go a little bit further. No, I went too far. I did locate an email, I think, for school board. That was it, Kayla Hauser for school board @gmail. Okay, we were able to find that, though, either from her website or a little other investigation through a Facebook page she had. But you sometimes have to allow, in the process of mailing, these wrinkles that come up where you're going to have to research the candidate to find out how to get a hold of them. So we did finally get her, put the email in our spreadsheet, so we now had more information than was in the candidate filing itself. Let me go back to the presentation now. Okay, and then before we start sending out the communications, we need a Google form for the PTA responses. We encourage everybody to respond online, even though we're also postal mailing them. And we did our own rather than use the national form, so that we can keep track right away of all the pledges that are coming in, because we've got to deal with thank you responses, creating other ways on the social media to do it that I'll be getting to a little bit further on. But anyway, we want to keep on top of that. So we need those responses as soon as they come in. So we created our own Google form and then report our results on an ongoing basis to national. Okay, and I think that basically, oh yeah, here's my note about the campaigns. Normally, whoops, I go one ahead here. 200, I think 200 was about the shortest campaign I've seen. 500, we are probably going to get there this year, because it's part of the 10-year cycle, redistricting, census, everything. And this year, the entire Minnesota legislature, every seat is up. That's 66 senators, 132 House seats, and you can multiply that times 2 or 3 running for all those seats. Plus we have some on the executive level, the governor and attorney general, and a few other seats are open there too. So it's probably going to reach 500 this year. So we've got to be on the ball with that. Okay, so our mailings, once we have the spreadsheet gathered and populated and we've got our form created, we have our communications that are going out, the PTA letter and pledge form. Basically, the pledge form is, I'll just show the letter here right now. This is a sample of the kind of letter we send out by both postal mail. Let's see, okay, got the logo, okay. This is a candidate letter, and you'll be able to look at these things after the fact, since these are all available at the links. I created special versions of this, which will be accessible to you. But the letter gives them some background on what the pledge is, what move to amend is, and invite them to answer at the pledge form I just showed you, which we created as a Google form, and gave them, in this particular case, a deadline. We accept things after that, and sometimes they come in, but this is a way of getting their attention within a window of no more than 3 weeks, maybe 2 weeks, allowing for people to actually act on it if they're interested in doing it, not letting it slip through the cracks, saying, yeah, I'd be interested in this pledge, but somehow it gets lost because the lead time is too great. So we try to give them a reasonably short time. The other feature of this is we have a lot of people running who are incumbents, of course, every state does, and they may have pledged before. So we provide them this business here about opting out. We will consider their past pledge to remain active unless they let us know otherwise. Or in some cases, they say, I not only support the pledge, I've got new observations to make about why I'm supporting it. So they may want to do pledge again anyway. And we've had people who were in the legislature who have done that. But at any rate, this gives them an idea that we'll consider their pledge still good unless they tell us no by the same date. And we've never had anyone decline. So that's worked out well. Okay. And I said here, the other thing is, okay, I'll get rid of that. The pledge form is just another page that goes with it. It's the same thing as the questionnaire. And what we do is we include this, basically both of these messages are copied and pasted into email communications we send to the candidate, or they're 2 printed pages that go out with the postal mail, to give them the idea, again, also giving them the link to the online form, but to give them the idea that they know what they're going to find when they go to that form and they're being asked about the pledge. These are the questions you'll see, so you won't be surprised by anything when you get there. Okay. And I mentioned before what we're basically, okay, we follow up in 2 weeks to non-responses that we may have gotten. And we do that by email only. So we've got to find their email address and do that. No more snail mail after this. It's the first batch, which is costly enough and takes time. So we'll do the follow-up by email because sometimes things do slip through the cracks and they haven't noticed it in their email, or their campaign office didn't provide it. I think I've gone too far ahead here. Okay. But at any rate, the wrinkles, we want to allow that time for wrinkles for some offices that don't have complete filing information, like the person I showed you. That's a relatively simple one. But some of the smaller campaigns for local offices, they may not even have a website campaign. They may not even have a specific Facebook page for their campaign. They may have a personal page in which their campaign is mentioned, or they don't do much because it's like they know the community that's going to be voting for them and they've got a good rapport, and it's like, I don't have to advertise myself too much to get to them. So we've contacted some of these people, had to do it through Facebook Messenger. In one case, I had to call a guy's, and we put the entire thing about the pledge in the message, and I've had a positive response. Somebody was running for mayor here actually responded that way, and pledged. There have been other cases where it may be I had to call his business office once I identified, what his occupation was outside of the office he was running, and just politely left a message. I can get you more information about this if you give me another number or an email to send it to. But all of that takes a little time to get to. So that's why the 3-week period is very good to have as a cushion. Okay, and then we track the contacts and the pledges, as I showed you on the sheet, about when calls are made, when emails are sent, snail mail, that sort of thing. You want to be able to track all that, even if you only have a couple of people working on this. Okay, and we, as I think I mentioned earlier, we report our pledges to national because we're using a local form, and we're also checking at the same time to make sure some candidates will remember the national website. They may lose the message, but they want to, that we sent them, but they want to pledge, and they'll go to national and put their pledge in there. We just double check to make sure some of those did not go directly to national that we should be tracking in our spreadsheet. So it's a two-way street. And what we've had to do, especially when we get to these bigger campaigns, and I'm going to be using this again this year, is the Google Mail Merge app, which you can rent by the month, is a fantastic way of being able to send out mass emails. The last one I used was about 330 emails we had to send out. And what I'm going to do is I'm trying to open the page for that for Google, but get it back. So you'll find something like this in which you can rent it. It's something like $15 or $17 a month. And you could take it part-time, and when your campaign is over in 3 or 4 months, you can drop the subscription, which is what we did, reactivate it when your next campaign starts. But at any rate, what that does is it keys in certain fields in the spreadsheet that you're sending to, the name of the person, of course, the office, the email address, and then it just runs through them and sends out 330 communications in about 7 or 8 minutes. It's done. And it creates a log for that, which I was trying to find, but I think that's on another page, so I'm not going to try to go over there. But at any rate, it adds a mail merge log to your spreadsheet so you can be sure everything went out, and it populates it as each email goes out. It's very useful. Okay. Reporting to the results to the PTA candidates. We do send out email thank yous to everybody, and that looks something like this. Will come up. Okay. Okay, this got a little squirrely on, this is the email lead in, but then it has the address, and this was to that candidate, actually. And it appreciation of their support, and that we will remain, we'd like them to remain with us, do a bit more, sign the pledge to amend as well, that we'll keep in touch. And this goes out whether or not they have won their seat, as it turns out, and we try to stay in touch with everybody who gets back to us from a communication like this, even because they may be running next time, even if they did not win their seat. They could be a local champion. So we try to stay in touch with them. Okay, go back to this. And then we also have begun with the last 2 campaigns doing a badge, a graphic badge that thanks them on our social media. And this is an example of it. Actually, the bottom of the pledge form, the Google form in which they can pledge that I did not scroll down to, has this on it and asks them, if you would like us to acknowledge you in this way, send us a picture or tell us we can use one that's on your campaign website, and we'll incorporate it and get it, you know, let you know when it's ready.
Hey, Jeff, sorry, we're still seeing the candidate questionnaire. Not sure if...
Oh, you're not. Okay. You're not seeing, oh, nuts. Okay. How about now?
Let's see.
No?
There you go. Now you're back on the slides.
Oh, okay, good. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. It was just...
Okay, let me back up here then. This is what we were doing. Okay. Okay. Did you see the email thank you before it gets squirreled? No, you didn't. Okay. All right, I'm gonna have to, let me see if we do this again now. Okay, actually, I could leave that one off. I've got it open already. Are you seeing this thank you here?
No, I'm still seeing the candidate questionnaire.
Okay, I must be on an inexact, hold on a second, let me get to another. Oh, okay, yeah, here it is. I think I got into another thing there.
Yeah, now I see your clicker moving around.
Okay, trying to find the, I'm nuts, where's the presentation now? Okay.
That's all right, take your time. Too many tabs open, Michael says. While you look for that, I will just bring up a question maybe here.
Okay.
Are you all paying for the mail campaign yourselves, or does National have funds to contribute to a campaign like that? Yeah, unfortunately, National doesn't have funds to contribute to that. We do have a database though, which you, as an affiliate, are able to use, but we don't have funds for other tools.
Let's
See.
All right.
Oh,
All right. I am, okay, I'm having, okay, are you seeing the slides again now?
not quite. We've got this like gray screen happening.
Okay, wait a second. Let me eliminate a couple of things here.
Yeah, take your time.
Are you seeing now?
No, I'm still seeing like a gray blue screen.
Please move this. I'm getting a please move this window away from the shared application. What does that mean?
You could try stopping your screen share and then starting it again.
Okay, let me do that.
Okay, yeah, take your time. Michael had a question, was wondering, would we be sending stuff out to all candidates in our state, not just local races, in other words?
Whichever offices are having races. With the exception of you may have to do some analysis on offices where the pledge would not be appropriate. But basically, we try to cover everything that's on the ballot that particular year. Okay. Are we back to the presentation yet?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, good. All right. Hopefully it won't happen again. Yeah, and to get back to the other thing you said about the funding for the mail campaigns, yeah, we handle our funding because that's something I did not specifically point out. Basically, it's our volunteers who handle it. We have a small bank account with money in it that we can pay for some of the supplies, so paying for stamps, paper and whatnot, and others are contributed by volunteers who want to make that commitment. So like, for example, I contribute all my printer ink and paper to printing up all the letters for these campaigns, but then we buy the stamp through the account for the network, that kind of thing. So it's a little back and forth. When I used Google Mail Merge the first time, I paid for it personally so we could try it out. And you can go back and forth that way. If it's something you would have contributed otherwise to your local affiliate, you might just want to put it directly into whatever the campaign needs are rather than putting it into a bank account that then goes back out to pay for those needs. But anyway, there are different ways that different people handle it. So, okay, so this was the pledge thank you badge that I mentioned. That's at the bottom of actually the pledge request when they get to the form. And when it appears on Facebook, it looks something like this. Let's see if it'll come up again. Okay, are you seeing that now? Okay.
Yep.
And this happened to be the guy running for school board in my area in St. Paul. He was one of our pledgers who successfully won his seat. And it was kind of gratifying. I knew him from earlier as at least a passing acquaintance because we were both in our Revolution Greater St. Paul as well. That's where he started out, and then he decided to run for school board in his district. So at any rate, this was another form of the thank you we'll provide to them. And they normally, we've had positive feedback that people appreciate that. Okay, we're back to the presentation now, or not?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, let me know anytime we're not, because I'll close some other windows. Okay, so we've got the email thank you. We've got these badges we create. Then the other things we do for pledgers is if it's a first-time pledger who does not know much about Move to Amend other than what we told them in the initial email, we will send them a copy of the Path to the 28th Amendment booklet, which most of you are probably familiar with, the blue and the red booklet that you can get from National. We'll make sure they know more, and especially whether or not they win their office or there's somebody who might be a candidate in the future but didn't win. If we want to keep them in the loop, we want them to know more about the importance of our cause and stay in touch. So we'll follow up and send them this booklet or something else if we're short on the booklets. And whoops, okay, hit the wrong thing there. And then we do tell them they may publicize their pledge if it helps their campaign, just so long as they stay clear of the implication that Move to Amend is endorsing their candidacy. It's just that we are in tune on our mission, which they support. We thank them for that, and they can publicize that this is one of my issues in common with Move to Amend without indicating that we have any endorsement of them. Okay, and then to our supporters, we do provide notices after campaigns, or as the campaign is in progress. We'll list it in our newsletter, usually multiple times, at least twice during the season. And when that comes up, it's something like this. Let's see if this comes up now. This is an issue after or just before voting on the 2020 campaign. We gave them an item here on final voter guide, this second item here, which I think I can scroll down to. And that looks like this. And we give them a little action lead in before your vote. If you haven't voted already, consider this. And we repeat what the pledge is, and then indicate everybody who's pledged already with a little legend if they answered yes to both questions, or if they're also a co-author of one of our bills, it's an incumbent running again, or if they did both. And these are the people, for example, from the Minnesota Senate that year who pledged, and the House, and then we had our seats in the US Senate here, US House races also, and one in the Senate race as well. And there are a few anomalies here, people who said no to question 1, but did submit a pledge. We will note that, so for the record, so that people know about those. But at any rate, this gets repeated a couple of times as needed during the campaign before voting. Okay, as I indicated, begins after the primaries. We'll do the first reports, and then we'll continue until Election Day. We encourage our constituents as well. We say, we're telling you about these people because if one of these is a candidate in your district, or when they get elected, if they're now your new representative, please thank them. Tell them this is important to you. And so we try to get them to do that as well. Okay, reporting on the campaign to the larger public, this would be. We have tried press releases. This is a thing that ended up in a secondary focus because we have not had much luck with this yet. We will create press releases like this one coming up now. Okay. And we'll provide a press release at the beginning of the campaign and telling them what it's about, and then try to reach the major media that reach most of the state. So going back to my slides here. Yeah, okay, stop with that. Bring up my slide. Okay, that would be our Twin Cities newspapers and also MinPost, which is an online publication that does very good election reporting, as well as every conceivable kind of issue of social and political importance, and reaches the state. I say we haven't had much success with this yet because we've never had a press release that resulted in an article that was made from it yet. We've been trying, but the other way is our social media posts on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, which we have yet to use more of. They can reach people who are not yet our followers, so we can let the larger world know. There are a lot more people that visit our Facebook pages than are getting our newsletter, for example. They overlap, but they're not the same group. So, and okay, further use of the campaign then. Once the campaign is over, we want to solicit the support, excuse me, of the pledgers who get elected to support our resolution bills in the Minnesota legislature, the one where we're trying to become the next state to ask Congress to craft an amendment and send it to the states. We would like to be the next one. We are still working on this since the 2013 to 14 biennium. But at any rate, this is a good connection to be able to say you pledged. This is one of those things that makes that pledge valuable that you can show in action. So, and then the other thing we do is we have a historical spreadsheet in which we put everybody who has ever pledged. And I am going to take a chance on opening this up and seeing what we can see here. This is getting a bit convoluted, but at any rate, I think I left in like 3 examples here. These are people who are not in office right now, but in various years, we track to the current election cycle who has won a race, lost a race, whether they've pledged that year, whether they've co-sponsored one of our bills, which get renumbered, of course, in each each biennium. And this goes back to 2013 to 14 here. And we try to track everybody who's ever supported this. This is where we get to the point where we need not just a spreadsheet expert, but somebody who can work with databases. And we don't have that yet. So we're still working with a spreadsheet like this. Okay, measures to adopt or improve on. One of the things I found out is we are not doing regular post-election reporting of pledgers who won their offices. So for example, the newsletter reports all the pledges we're getting in, but we have not officially, that I can find, certainly not in a newsletter, we have somehow let slip through the cracks of saying, all these pledgers won. Which one is yours? Thank them again. We could do that. And we had a very good year in 2020 when that's that newsletter I showed you where it had a lot of Minnesota Senate and House seats, and it had the US House and so on. At any rate, that year we had 100, I forgot what it is, 191 pledges and somewhere around that. I had that number here somewhere earlier. And we had 61. We had just over half of them won their seat, 119 pledges, and 61 won their seats. So we met this year's goal in 2020 for 50%, which was really impressive. Okay, so we need to do that reporting regularly, which I was chagrined to find out we haven't been doing. Because it occurred to me, and I looked it up and said, no, I got to change that bullet point. That goes in here. What to improve? Okay, more consistent effort to get newly elected pledgers to support our resolution bills in the state legislature, because usually it's been a matter of workload. We've got a lot of prior co-authors and pledgers who get their seat year after year. And when we're introducing the bills again, the first thing we have to do is focus on everybody who's co-authored before so we can get them on board again. Sometimes that's a lot of effort and we don't get to the newbies quite as often. Although we did at the beginning of this last biennium, because one of the newbies was my representative in the House and I got her to be the lead author on our bill. So, but that's a special situation. We need to do that for all the new people. And then also the third bullet point, more reach out to local district media during the campaign. That is with the press release kind of reports on the campaign, and also recruiting constituents in the area who are our supporters to write letters to the editor in their local media. We did back in 2016, we actually went to a very thorough effort to find out what the local media were in every district in the state so that we could affect that plan. And then we didn't have the person power to actually carry it through that year. But a lot of that information is probably still useful to us. And when we can get up to speed doing it, we can use that same information. You know, those local papers that are either paper only, or they're online, or they're both, the community newspapers are the kinds of things we were targeting. So at any rate, these are all areas for improvement. When we get, I left one blank in there. These important do's and don'ts that National kindly provided, they're pretty self-explanatory, but they do, on the May side, the left side, they continue some of the things that Minnesota would like to improve on. Candidate forums, we have not been able to, we don't have the ability to conduct any of them, but asking questions at forums we have done with sporadic success before. We'd like to make that a regular thing. We did one campaign, the last campaign, we located since we were in the COVID period, all these forums were generally online. We identified them all and then tried to find constituents in those districts where the candidates were running to attend them and ask our question. Limited success because that came very late in the day when we were able to gather that information, and we didn't get much response from constituents we could locate. But whoops, we were at least trying to do that. So that was a start on that. That's another good one. As for other things, they're all good. Encouraging voter registration. We've done posts on our Facebook page for that, and that's something we would like to continue. Sending the educational information, I mentioned that. If they pledge, we send a follow-up to them. Ballot initiatives we haven't dealt with yet, and voter scorecards, but they're all things that we could adopt, just like the things that I had mentioned on the last slide. Okay. And then from National, of course, we can get all of this material, even the stuff we are not using in Minnesota directly. We adapted National's material to do that. So this is all very useful stuff you can get to help you out and make limited resources go much further. Okay. Next steps. That's pretty self-explanatory. And this will, of course, be on the slides for reference. And that gets us to questions. Okay, so I am going to, should I stop presenting now at this point?
Sure. Yeah, if you wanted to close the
Or-
slides, that works, or if you want to keep our contact info up. Thank you so much. That was really great. I'm seeing a lot of comments in here like, wow, you all are doing so much. You have so much. And so I just thank you for all of that. It's very inspiring. Know that Jeff and the Minnesota folks have been doing this for years. They've perfected this. They have a real system. So, don't be daunted if you don't have the capacity to pull off this level of organization. You can get there. And like Jeff said, they have adapted some of the resources that we have at National. So, you could scale it down a little bit and not do that right away, and build up to something more like that. But it's really great to see what you all have and your process. Thank you so much.
And okay, and I should let everybody know that we're here. Yeah, contact me or any of us. A number of us monitor that account at Minnesota at movetoamend.org. And we can answer questions. One of the notes I put in here is the people who are mostly core to this campaign are on what we call a legislation action team. So they're knowledgeable about a lot of these things because they've been doing it year after year like me. So one way or another, we can get you an answer, even if it's not me that you hear from first. If it's something somebody else can't answer, they'll let me know. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
Lisa is wondering, what's the comparison in your experience of Republican to Democrat pledge signers? Do you have a?
Well, it's pretty much been as expected, despite the emphasis. This is a nonpartisan thing. We have not really had, we've had Republicans who have responded to the pledge, but it's to say, I don't accept this part of it, or I don't accept all of it, but I'm sending you a response and here's why. And they'll put it in the thing. We have not really had any that have, I think maybe we've had one that has actually agreed with at least part of the pledge. At one time, as one of our other volunteers would say, a couple of legislative sessions ago, we had a Republican who was willing to sign on to one of our bills in the Minnesota legislature, and then backed out afterwards, we learned, because his party told him, you don't go there. You don't do that. So that was our one chance. And but the pledges pretty much have been only a handful of responses just to say, I don't agree with this, or I don't agree with this part of it. But they took the time to actually let us know what they were thinking. So that's all to the good.
Yeah, I have seen several like independent, libertarian, green, third party. We do get outside of the two parties for sure sometimes. Jeffrey's wondering, any utility for mailing congressional pledge supporters as a thank you?
Well, you can use that. We can use that mail merge, Google Mail Merge, for doing that en masse. I have not used that yet for that purpose, but resorting, actually, when they support the pledge, we've got filters. When you're able to take a look at that blank spreadsheet I provided for our tracking, you'll notice there are filters on them, so we can filter it different ways. That's how, for example, I came up with the number of, we had 119 signers and we had 61 who won their seats. We just filtered the appropriate columns to get those two numbers. We can do the same thing with the pledge signers. You can filter it down to the pledge signers, 119, then put it through Google Mail Merge, and it'll send them all out just for that purpose. So that's much better than the way we used to do it by hand when they were much smaller campaigns.
Right.
Yeah.
So Lisa says, so do you have to remain nonpartisan for organizational status reasons? Yeah. So what we need to do in order to remain nonpartisan is that we ask all candidates in whatever race we're targeting. So if it's the school board race, we make sure that we ask all candidates from all parties to do the pledge, cover your bases there. And then in the reporting, we don't send an email saying, vote for so-and-so because they said they support the amendment, right? All we say is, here are what the candidates who responded said. We asked everyone, and here are the responses. So you can make of that what you will, right? So yeah, we don't do endorsements, coordinate with political parties. If a party or a partisan group wants to endorse us, that's okay, but we don't do that in reverse.
Right. That's good. And when you get a chance to look at that example, you go over to the link for the newsletter where we did reporting on the candidates who've pledged. The wording is in that ballpark to suggest that, okay, what was the point I was going to make? It suggests that if this issue is important to you, you're one of our supporters. That's why you're getting this newsletter. You might consider this, if you haven't voted yet, as to whether this candidate is a desirable choice, without telling them any more than that. Anything else?
Totally. So okay, so if you are interested in this, if this reaches you and you're interested in working on the pledge, go ahead and put your name in the chat, and we can make sure that we collect those, and we'll get in touch with you to make sure we get you plugged in. And yes, this training will be posted online. So if you signed up and registered for tonight, you will get an email, and we'll send the recording and the slides and the resources that Jeff brought, like the template and things like that. Okay, cool. So we've got people like Lawrence getting started, saying they're interested in the chat. Thanks for that. And like I said, there'll be another email after this. So if you can't get to your chat right now to put your name in the chat, you can get in touch with us when you get that and let us know that you're interested. You can always email us at info@movetoamend.org, and we can get you plugged in that way too. So if you want to think about it, that's fine. But we'd love to know right now if you feel inspired. Oh, when will this training be posted online? Probably within the next few days. By the end of the week, usually. Alfonso, thanks to Alfonso, who's behind the scenes helping us make it happen, too, and to others who helped organize this. I don't know that we have any more questions that I can see.
Okay.
All right, and we are still live on YouTube and Facebook, so thank you for those of you tuning in there. And if you have questions, you can reach us that way. You can also type questions in the chat on those platforms, or type that you're interested there, and we'll collect your names and get back to you. So let us know if you want us to touch base. Cool. We've got people who are interested in working with you in Minnesota.
Okay.
Great. Okay.
That's great.
Good, good. All right. Well, are there any further questions anyone has about anything we went over tonight? That's all I can see. Let's see, Jeff, any final points before we close out?
No, just basically a repeat that, remember, we're only a handful of people here, and we stumbled in the beginning. We were selective on our first campaigns. Like, we didn't try to do every office in the state, especially for local races, but we ramped up, and we really are no more people than we started out with, but we're handling a much larger statewide campaign now. It can be done. You're going to have to devote a fair amount of time during the pledge, off and on, during that period of 3 or 4 months for those few people, but it's doable. It really is.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. That's exactly the message that you should take away from this.
We'll be glad to provide any kind of advice going along. If you start your campaign, that's fine. It's just more campaigning during the season.
Get it all out there. That's right. Yeah. Thank you so much. Really good support in Minnesota. Really, that's an offer you want to take him up on if you can. So staff, maybe you can help me gather the names that came up in the chat here so we can keep track and get in touch with those folks. Keep thinking about this and let us know if you need some help or want to get in touch with anybody to talk more about it. Thank you so much, Jeff. Really appreciate you and all the
Thank
work.
you, Jessica. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye. All right.
Here's the leave button.